My name is Luis. I'm part of the EDP team, and I'm going to talk to you today about the European Data Portal's COVID-19 initiative. So we'll cover a bit of the EDP's COVID-19 section background. Then I will talk to you about how we measure impact of this section quantitatively, the results that we had, and some points for conclusion and discussion. So the COVID-19 outbreak, as everyone here knows, it's an unfortunate event that dominates the world's attention. More than ever, citizens need to be well informed, and we anticipated in the EDP that there would be a higher demand for data sets and information about COVID-19 and what's happening in Europe about it. So we put ourselves to work and designed and launched a COVID-19 section that you can see on the screenshot there. That's how the main the homepage of this section looked when it was active. It was comprised of three subsections: dataset subsection, which was a selection of the most important COVID-19 related datasets from national portals and the EU Open Data Portal. Just a caveat there, datasets were manually added instead of using the process of harvesting for agility, to have them faster there, because we identified that it was important to have the datasets highlighted as quickly as possible or as soon as possible. So an editorial team just did a manual harvest of the relevant datasets on each national data portal. And this also allowed us to put there some datasets that were from other organizations, not data portals that we were harvesting. So that was our dataset section. We also had a section about data stories, about relevant challenges that could be solved with data, or about the impact of COVID-19 on Europe, on the European landscape. And finally, we had a third subsection of data initiatives. I think this could be equated to the apps and reuses in a certain way. So data-driven initiatives, for example, the Oxford Tracker. I think many of the apps that probably were also featured and that the previous presenters from Austria and France talked about were featured here, of course, depending on the decision of the editorial team. And this was not limited to the public sector. It's nice things we found, we put there. Okay, so this section was actively updated from the beginning of April to the end of June. It was displayed on the EDP's homepage until the end of July. So it was highlighted really on the first thing that you saw when you entered the EDP during those days was, hey, here is the EDP COVID section. And then after the end of July, then this the stories part was moved to the impact and studies subsection that existed previously in the portal, for where all the studies that the EDP does are stored. So we moved the stories there, and the datasets were moved to the regular dataset sections that also have previously existed on the EDP. Okay, so after doing all that, we wanted to check, was there really a higher demand for data and information or about COVID-19? And did the COVID-19 section make a difference on this? We wanted to know if really this effort paid off and fulfilled the expectations of the users, and this hypothesis that we have that there will be a higher demand for information and datasets about this topic. So we did we measured the impact that this had in a quantitative way. Full details you will be able to find on the analytical report number 19. That will be published very soon. I think next week it will be already published on the portal. And in that report, we studied the dataset supply and demand before COVID-19. what categories and datasets are more demanded, if there are any periodical or episodical demands, and if we were able to spot any changes after COVID-19. And more specifically in the COVID-19 section, if we had more users coming to the EDP during that period, if this was they were visiting the new section, and specific dataset demand of COVID-19. So in the rest of this presentation, I will give you an overview of this report, a condensed view of what we found on this report, and you will be able to get to the gory details from next week, hopefully. So the data that we used was web analytics data that I see some other presenters have talked about it, how they collected in their portals. For us, is a very useful tool to monitor what's happening in the portal. So we use the session data of the portal visitors. That means the page they click, the data sets they download, and from where they arrive, if they arrive from a search engine, from a website, or from a social network. We did not use the IPs because it's considered a personal identifier according to GDPR. We only use country aggregation. That means to check from which country the access came to. The drawback of this is that we don't have accurate returning users information. So, for example, we cannot say if dataset was downloaded many times by the same user in different days. This is one limitation that we have to be compliant with GDPR. However, we were able to get to extract a lot of interesting information on this. Before jumping in, let me tell you about the time frames that we considered. We analyzed 3 time frames that we put like here, that before the COVID-19 section, from 2nd April 2018 to 5th April 2020. Then this period here was when the COVID-19 section was published on the homepage, and this period here from August to end of October is the one that we considered after the COVID-19 section was retired from the homepage and we can say archived or moved to the impact and studies subsection. More generally, we call the period before the COVID section the old normal. It's about 24 months, and the period during the COVID-19 section after its archival, the new normal. That was 8 months in total. So first question that we ask is, was there a change in dataset category demand? When you're looking into the portal, when people browse the dataset section of the portal, they can use category filters. I think all portals have this, that the datasets are labeled by categories, and then users can filter according to health, economy, and all that. So we wanted to see if there was a change before and after COVID on this demand for a category. So here on the left, we have this is the list of categories, and this is the number of sessions that we identified that clicked on that category that used. So a user that was on the dataset section and click on the filter, I want to see transport datasets or economy datasets. So on this side, we have for the old normal period before the COVID-19 section, and here the new normal period after that. What we observe here is that there was indeed a change in some categories. People were more interested on economy datasets and also on health and science datasets, which for us made sense because health and science were the 2 categories that we expected people to search for COVID-19 datasets. Another question we ask is if there was a change on the dataset download distribution, how many times datasets were downloaded. So we have here again the comparison between the old normal and the new normal periods. This is a log scale here between the number of datasets and how many times they were downloaded. So bear in mind that this is a logarithmic scale. That means that there are a lot of datasets that were downloaded only once. Most datasets are downloaded only once, and there are a few datasets that are very popular, downloaded more than 200 times. However, we can see here that the distribution did not change significantly between the two periods. There are still lots of datasets that are downloaded only once, and only a few that are, we can say, very popular. So let's talk about those popular datasets. So in the old normal period that I remember was over 24 months, from 2018 to 2020, we're showing here the top 10 more popular, the top 10 more downloaded. You will see the full details on the report. I'm just going to highlight two facts about the types of these datasets. The top two datasets, and this one over here, after some extra analysis on the data that we had, we conclude that this is data that people is looking for educational purposes. This is a dataset about automatic number plate recognition, car number plate recognition. This is from traffic cameras. This is a dataset about credit card transactions that in fact comes from a very small borough in the UK. So for us, it's very surprising that there was this many downloads. And this is also another dataset about late invoices payment. When we cross this data with data about how people came to these datasets and what keywords they use to arrive to these datasets, we think that in fact people here are not really looking for credit card transactions from 2015-16 for this very particular borough of the UK. They're really looking for credit card transactions because both transactions and number plate recognition are things that are very often used as exercises in data science and machine learning courses. So this is why we think this is people that it's looking for examples of generic data and not these very specific number plate or card transactions. The second fact that we highlight from these top 10 data sets before COVID is that we have several, or 4 out of 10 are geospatial data, which we thought it was interesting on its own. I will also have a further highlight coming from a comment from a previous discussion. These two here, DTM Spain and DTM Germany, actually are digital terrain models that were contributed by a member of the public. In fact, I think these two come from the Austrian data portal, that some member of the community say, hey, I just looked that these digital terrain models are missing, so I put the work and here they are. And look, at least from an EDP level, they are very, very popular. Something similar with this one. This is a French data set. So this is the shape files of the French departments from OpenStreetMaps, and this was contributed by the OpenStreetMap community, not by an official, let's say, institution or organization. So that's interesting for that discussion about the usefulness of community contributed data. If we move now to the popular datasets during new normal, that it was, I highlight here, it's an 8 months period, so it's slightly shorter. We still see the interest on geospatial data. There are three datasets that are geospatial, not exactly the same, except the digital terrain models for Germany. And mostly of all the others are COVID-19 related datasets. We see here that this one in particular was very much more popular than the others. This one here is the EU-wide dataset that is published by the European Open Data Portal. We think that this one was very popular because we had a direct link from many from the publications office and from many EU European Commission sites that said, hey, COVID-19 data is here on the European data portal. So those referrals from very prominent institutions is what led to this very high popularity of this particular dataset with respect to the others. Okay, so next question is, did the EDP got more visits during COVID-19? So we just compared the total number of visits over, in this time, comparable length periods, and we can quickly see here that yes, while the COVID-19 section was active, the portal had more visits than what we call the previous immediate. That is this is in 4 months period. So this is the 4 months before. But as this includes the Christmas break, where we have seen that people don't visit that much the EDP during the Christmas break, we also took a look to another period of 4 months where there was no Christmas break. But in both cases, we can see that yes, during the COVID-19 section, there was more visits to the EDP. So the answer to this question is yes. Now, did they come to the COVID-19 section, or were they going to the previous versions of the portal? So in this chart here, each colored line represents one section, one big section of the portal, and the blue line is the COVID-19 section. As you can see, there's 0 here because at this time period the COVID-19 section did not exist, but when it existed, it was clearly the most popular one. So the answer here is yes, and we also know that there was a slight decrease in the usage of the other sections of the portal. And what happened after the section was archived? Well, this is exactly the same chart. From here to the left is the same chart as we saw before, and here we add the period after the COVID-19 section was archived. So we notice a slight decrease overall in all sections of the portal, but still the COVID-19 section is the most popular, even if it's now archived. People is still reaching to it mostly through search engines. So search engines picked up the new location and were still being redirected there whenever they found the EDP on their Google or Bing or Yahoo searches. In terms of what subsection of COVID-19 was more popular, we counted the number of visits to each subsection, and we found that initiatives were slightly more popular than stories, but these numbers here, as you can see, there's no section that was really much more popular than the other. What we do notice here on the second row of the table, exclusive visits, this is the number of visits that went only to one of the sections. So we see here there were a lot of them. So most users did not cross over sections. If you come to a story, you go to a story and then you get out. If you come to an initiative, you land on an initiative, then you see that and you're out. And if you're looking for datasets, you stay looking for datasets. I will add that this is consistent with behavior that we saw before COVID in the other sections of the EDP. For example, people that comes for the training in the EDP stick to the training and then go to other sections, and people that come to search for datasets on the EDP also stick to search for datasets, do not cross over to the other sections. So this is interesting as an indication of possible user profiles or profiles of the people that use the portal. And most users came straight from search engines. That's also another thing that we found out. Now, let's focus a bit on stories. Why on stories? Because those are the ones that survived the archival in a way. I mean that when the EDP section, the COVID-19 section was archived, in its new place, it was mostly the stories and some of the initiatives. Some other initiatives were not archived, were not saved, and the datasets were moved to normal dataset section. So here we have the number of visits to each of the stories that we published in chronological publication order. So, we see that there were 3 stories that stood out over the rest: the Oxford government response tracker, the air pollution traffic reduction related to COVID-19, and a story on all the dashboards that were available all across Europe about COVID-19. If we go after the archival of the COVID-19 section, we found something very interesting, that there were some stories that picked up a lot of traction after that, after they were published. In particular, these 2 about COVID-19 tourism, the impact on tourism industry, and the impact on education. We also know that the one about dashboards was still very, very popular during this period. So interesting enough, we had more visits after archival. We think that this is an indication that people were just reaching this via the search engines, and the search engine just understood that content changed location and kept serving it to the users that were looking for information on search engines about these particular things. We noticed a lot of people looking about, COVID-19 education, COVID-19 and e-learning, or tourism and COVID-19, and the EDP was highly ranked in search engines for this, and that's why we end up with a lot of visits on these particular stories. So these hit stories, as we call it, drove a lot of traffic. We also wanted to see how was the access to these top stories in time, to see if there was a peak on this. It was to respond to an event, maybe to a social media post, but at least for the data dashboard story, this is the timeline here of the data dashboard story. The interest started in July, way before its initial publication. Then it kept steady, and there were no peaks. And again, most referrals from search engines. Same thing happened with the e-learning and COVID-19 started. This is when it was published. Not much interested, but at some point that we believe connected with general interest about this topic, well, the story was there, and people start finding it, and then we had a steady income of visits to it. Where we did find a peak was on the air pollution story. Unfortunately, due to the privacy limitations, in this case from Google, that not always or almost never you can get the exact keyword from Google that led to a specific page, then we were not able to ascertain why we had a peak here, and something must have happened about air pollution around this time. It was very popular, because after that story was not really very popular or very accessed. So in conclusion, we could say in the EDP that the COVID-19 section was a success, because it represented a big chunk of visits to the portal during that period, without impacting too much on the numbers of the previous sections. But this was mostly due to a few hit stories and initiatives. We also noted that when datasets were put out of the spotlight, when they went back to their normal dataset section, then the demand for the COVID-19 related data sections was very small. So only the EU-wide corona tracker, the one that was very popular, that was still being accessed a lot. We do think that this provides evidence that curated content drives more use, and appears to be more useful for the general public than just throwing the datasets and their description there, which I think it's quite obvious. No, the general public, it's not going to open a dataset unless it's really forced to. And another thing that was that we noticed that is very important is that the search engine optimization is very important. Most of our visits come from that, from people that find us on Google, not because they come to the EDP, at least on the COVID-19 part. Some points that I would like to add for discussion. We believe that dataset demand patterns will be different in national portals. People go to national portals for a specific national regional data, and this is not the right order here. And people goes to the EDP when they look for generic data or European-wide data. And we think that if we are able to detect these trends across different countries, where, for example, a particular data set is more demanded, or if we see, oh, look, people across Europe is really looking about a vaccine distribution in all the national portals, then if this information is sent upstream to the EDP, then the EDP could curate a related data story and put some effort on integrating those datasets to offer an European view, so it can quickly answer to a question, the same question, for example, vaccination plans or vaccination distribution across all Europe. So then the point for discussion is how we do this. I think this relates also with Martin talked a bit about standards and data standards to be able to in the end it's about data integration or integration at the data level between the data portals. So that's it from my side. So I will be happy to take questions.